Derivative power rule. What is the power rule for the derivative? Let's say that you want to take the derivative of x raised to an n power. To take the derivative of this particular expression, you bring down the n in front of the x variable, and the n right here you minus 1. This is the formula for taking the derivative of this kind of expression, and it's called the power rule. Make sure that you know this formula well before you can do the derivative of it. For example, let's say that you're given this problem of taking the derivative of x raised to the 4th power. So to take the derivative of this expression, you bring down the 4 in front of the variable, and then as for the exponent, you minus 1, which matches the formula's process. So the 4 stays the same. 4 minus 1 equals to 3. So this is the answer for the derivative of x raised to the 4th power. Notice that anytime you take the derivative of this particular expression, it's the same thing as saying that you're taking the slope of it. For example, if you were to graph this expression right here, the graph will look like this, like a parabola. And if you want to find out the slope of this point right here, you just take the derivative that we solved earlier and plug in the x value for it, and the y value will be 32. So the slope for this particular point right here will be 32. And as for the slope for this particular point at the 0, you just take the derivative that we solved earlier for this particular given expression, and you plug in the x value for it and solve for it, and you will get 0. So the slope for this point right here will be 0, 0. And the slope of tangent for this point right here will be 2, 32. As for the slope for this one, it will be negative 2, 32. So the basic idea of a derivative of the power rule is almost the same thing as finding the slope of the graph. The slope can be the proof of the power rule derivative. Now that we solve this kind of this type of expression, let's try a radical. For example, let's say they ask us to find the derivative of x raised to radical 4. So according to the power rule, you bring this down in front of the variable, which is radical 4 x radical 4 minus 1, according to the power rule. So radical 4 becomes 2, and the x stays the same, and radical 4 becomes 2 and then minus 1. And the answer for this derivative of this particular given expression will be 2x, because x raised to the 1st power will be x variable by itself. Example 3. Take the derivative of this x raised to 1 divided by 4. So according to the power rule, you bring out the exponent, you bring down the exponent in front of the x variable, and as for the exponent, you always minus 1 according to the power rule. And when you do the algebra, 1 divided by 4 minus 1 is the same thing as saying 1 divided by 4 minus 4 divided by 4, because you want to make this 1 becomes 4 divided by 4. If there's a 3 right here, then you will minus 3 divided by 3. Whatever number right here, you just like duplicate it for the numerator and the denominator. So when you do the basic algebra, you will get 1 divided by 4, x raised to negative 3 divided by 4. Now, for this expression right here, it's better to simplify further, because you don't want a negative exponent, you want a positive exponent. So to get a positive exponent, you just divide it by 1, and this exponent right here will become positive. So it will be 1 divided by 4 times 1 divided by x raised to 3/4, because you want this exponent to be positive. So you always divide it by 1. And when you multiply out, the answer will be like this. See, notice that the exponent right here becomes positive by going through this process. Now that we do the positive fractions exponents, let's try a negative exponent derivative. For example, let's say they ask us to find the derivative of x raised to negative 4 divided by 3. So according to the power rule, you always bring down the exponent in front of the variable. And as for the exponent, you always minus 1. So we bring it down in front of the x variable, so it will be like this. And for the exponent right here, you always minus 1, so it will be like this. So anytime you have a fraction minus 1, you always make the 1 becomes the denominator's variable. So in this case, it will be 3 divided by 3. If the denominator is like, for instance, 9, then you will minus 9 divided by 9. Whatever number right here will be duplicated like this way. So when you do an algebra from the x variable from here, if you do the algebra, it will be like this. Because negative 4 minus negative 3, negative 4 minus 3 will be negative 7 divided by 3. Notice that you have a negative exponent right here. Anytime you have a negative exponent, you need to simplify further to make it positive. So to make it positive, you always divide it by 1. So negative 4 divided by 3 times 1 divided by x raised to 7 divided by 3. And when you multiply out, the answer will be like this. So the basic concept of a power rule is this formula. Make sure that you know this formula well.